everyone, to People on Dating. I'm your host, Will Morales. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this podcast is about the ups and downs of dating and how to navigate through it. Today, my guest is Oona Metz. Did I get the last name right?
Yep.
Perfect. She's a licensed independent clinical social worker, a certified group psychotherapist, and a fellow of the American Group Psychotherapy Association. Oona has over 30 years of experience working with individuals, families, and groups. Her private practice offices are located in Brookline and Arlington, Massachusetts. Oona is active on numerous committee and boards related to group therapy and prioritizes ongoing learning in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Oona, thank you so much for being on People on Dating. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thank you
Well,
so much for having me on.
no, it's a pleasure. And today's a good topic, right? It's dating after divorce. But before we get
Yes.
there, tell us a little bit about yourself. What was that journey like to become a licensed independent clinical social worker? What was that aha moment for you, and what was that journey like?
Oh, great. Love the question. I have been a therapist for the past 30 years. And about 15 years ago, I started leading divorce support groups for women. And I now have three divorce support groups for women that meet every single week. And so I've literally seen hundreds of women through that process of the emotional journey of divorce. Um, and these women were asking me for a book for a long time. They said, I really want to read a book about this. And, I kept recommending this book that was written in 1992 because there was no current book by a therapist for women about divorce. And so I finally decided, you know what? I'm going to write it myself. And so that is my book right there. It's
Unhitched.
called Unhitched, The Essential Divorce Guide for Women, and it just came out in January.
Oh, congratulations. We'll definitely talk more
Thank
about the
you.
book. So,
Yep.
Una, like when I look at whether YouTube videos or other podcasts, or I read stories about dating
Hmm.
after divorce, and if
Yep.
going from a woman's point of view, it depends, obviously, but some are, you know, it takes them a while to recover. Some
Hmm.
do recover right away. Um,
Hmm.
what would be the difference though when someone recovers, quickly, and where someone is kind of regretting divorcing? Especially, I guess it depends on the age. Am I in the
Hmm.
ballpark there?
It depends on so many things. I think one thing, if people have children or not, that can make the divorce certainly harder. Or if the two spouses really don't agree or become kind of vicious towards each other or drags out with the attorneys, that can make it harder. And I also just think, people's coping styles and their mental health, before, during, and after divorce all kind of relate to how well they can kind of go through the grieving process. Because I think, divorce is a death of a marriage, right? And so people really need to grieve their marriage before, I would say, before they can get back out on the dating scene. And I always recommend that people spend some time really dating themselves before they go out and try to date other people.
So, how long would the recovery of a divorce? I guess it depends on the person and whether they're
It,
seeking therapy or not. Where they could go right back out there and start dating again. Um,
yeah.
I find it again when I do a little research on that. Some women don't want to go out there again because unfortunately
Hmm.
some of the men don't meet their standards.
Hmm.
Some of the guys are terrible. Some guys
Hmm.
don't take women. I mean, take these married women for granted by saying, "Oh, she's married, she's damaged goods," and not
Hmm.
giving them a chance to get to know
Yep.
the woman. Does
Right.
my question statement
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
sense? Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think for women who've been betrayed, their trust has been betrayed. It's hard for them to trust again, to trust other people. And sometimes it also feels like it's hard for them to trust themselves. They feel like, how was I in a marriage where I got betrayed and I didn't realize it until the end? And so it's hard now for me to even trust my own judgment. And so sometimes, if there's been betrayal, people might need a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the other thing that I see, Will, a lot of is um, I see women who are coming out of especially long-term marriages and not really wanting, some of them don't want to live together with somebody again. They might say, well, I'd like to date and maybe go out to dinner on the weekends and things like that, or maybe do a little traveling, but I don't want to share a house with anybody ever again. They're kind of like, I've had years and years of picking up my husband's socks, dirty socks off the floor, and I don't want to do that anymore. Um, so I think there's a little bit more openness to having different kinds of relationships after divorce. You know, most people who divorce aren't looking to have kids again. If they're older, they already have kids. So they're looking for a different kind of partner, I think. And some of them want to live together. Some of them want to just date. Some of them just want to go out and have sex. It really, there's quite a variety that I've seen in my practice.
How important is now friendship, like having, a support group, right? You might be able
Hmm.
to help, your clients and things like that.
Yep.
But how about, the friends, whether it's on the male
Hmm.
side or the female side, um
Yeah.
just being there for them, because we all, whether we're not divorced or we broke up with someone, we always need someone to talk to for a little while. And I've
Yes.
been I've
Yes.
been at this end though, Una, a couple of times where it was an on and off relationship. They weren't married, but
Hmm.
the boyfriends or the ex boyfriends end up talking to
Hmm.
me, and it seems like it was a relief because they talked for over an hour, just pretty much
Uh-huh.
about the person. And
Yep.
we were hoping we get back together, but she did this.
Hmm.
It's and I one thing I don't like is when they blaming each other. It
Yeah.
seems like nobody's taking accountability, whether it's
Right.
1%, 99%, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah. So go
That's a
ahead,
red
Una.
flag.
Yeah.
That's
So
a red flag if somebody's saying, I'm a complete and utter victim and it's the other person did everything wrong and I did everything right. It's, I don't think there's very many marriages where it's really 50-50.
right.
But it's also not 99-1 either, right?
I definitely get
So,
that.
but I think back to your initial question about the importance of friendship and support. I think especially when you're going through a divorce or any kind of breakup, it's so important to have people who can support you and you can really talk to in an open and vulnerable way. And that's really why I run the support groups that I run because I think women often feel so isolated, and I'm sure men do too. It's like, how come half of marriages end in divorce and I don't know anyone going through one right now, right? And so it's really helpful to have, a team of people or a few people who are also going through what you're going through so they can understand it better.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that about marriages because I'm thinking to myself, I think maybe one I know, in since I can remember, maybe one
Uh,
couple, two tops, but it's
uh-huh.
more always a boyfriend and girlfriend that break up, and
Yeah.
then they go to separate ways, they complain, whatever.
Mhm.
Um, so we talking about support groups, which is very important to have. Um, Now, do these, whether they're women or men, but since you deal more with women, am I correct
Yep.
in
I deal more with women. Yep.
um do they still feel, do they I hate to say take blame, but I'm trying to frame the question not to blame the women, obviously. um do they feel that they could have worked it out, or maybe the husband didn't want to work it out, he just wanted to go his
Hmm.
separate ways? That does my question make sense?
Hmm. Yeah, I think what I've seen is in my practice is that women are really oftentimes try pretty hard for a long time to try to work it out to stay in the marriage. I think most women, if they're married, they would like to stay married, but it's more important to them that they're happily married,
Yeah.
right? Or happily single. And frankly, they get to the point where happily single is better for them than unhappily married, right? And so a lot of times I have heard women who say, I begged my husband to go to marital counseling and he wouldn't do it. And I begged him to help me with the kids and he wouldn't do it. And it's not, again, it's not to blame men for this
Yes.
but this is just what I hear from the women that I work with. and they have their part too. But yeah, I think they're generally pretty motivated to try to work it out. But you can only, as I like to say, if you're pedaling a bicycle built for two and you're the only one
Yeah.
pedaling, it works if you're on a flat surface. But when you start going uphill, you know, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard work. You
No,
can't do it for two.
and it's funny because I when I do research about dating and all that, I do see some women always say, hey, he doesn't help with the household, or he
Hmm.
doesn't, he doesn't help with the chores, the household, the
Yep.
kids, and all that. So
Yep.
I've heard that too. Um,
Yep. You know
and
what the research says about that? It's
no,
really interesting.
mhm.
When a man and woman get married, women's household labor goes up 7 hours per week,
Oh
and
wow,
men's goes down 1 hour per week.
oh wow. So they're relying on the woman to do everything
Yeah.
in
And when
certain
women
cases.
get
Yeah, yeah,
divorced,
yeah.
when women get divorced, they usually have more time with their children, but they do less household labor when they get divorced, which means they're doing household labor for their husband.
Right, right.
You
Wow.
know? Yeah.
How do you
That's a
have that?
stark.
So how do you have that discussion? At do you do start that at the dating stage or when you guys get engaged? Because I also wanted
Mhm.
to touch now that I've been seeing lately, Una, is athletes or celebrities having prenup.
Mhm.
They want to present the
Prenuptial
prenup.
agreements.
Yeah, so
Yep.
now I'm seeing that more. But let's talk
Yep.
about discussion of the household chores.
Hmm.
The few times or the last few times I dated someone, I didn't mind doing the dishes. I don't care.
Hmm.
Some women don't
Hmm.
like throwing out the garbage. Why not? I do it.
Hmm.
When I live by myself,
Yep.
I have to do it anyway. So I
Yep.
don't mind contributing, especially if a woman's cooking for me and she's taking care
Yep.
of me. I'm fine with that. And
Hmm.
this is not even marriage. This is just
Yep.
in
Yeah.
the dating
Yeah.
stage.
Good. Yep.
Um, are men just automatically just dumping that on the woman?
Yeah, you know what's interesting? Even your language, when you're saying, I don't mind contributing, it's
Right.
almost like you're saying it's her job and I'll help her do the job, right? Which
Typical
is
guy speak.
Yeah, which is really different than we have these jobs to do and we have to
Yeah.
divide them up, not equally, but equitably, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's not like, like sometimes men will say, yeah, I'll babysit the kids. You're not babysitting kids. You're parenting your own kids, right?
Right.
You don't babysit your
Right.
kids. You
Yeah.
parent your kids, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of baked into our system, right? We have a system that we've all grown up in, and it's kind of baked in. And so I think it takes a lot of work between the couple to make sure that things do feel more equitable. And again, that doesn't mean like I'll cook one night, you cook one night. Maybe somebody's a better cook. That's fine. But
Right.
then what are you going to do? If she's a better cook, then you do the dishes, right? Or you do the shopping, or
Yeah.
figuring out how to make it more equitable.
Yeah. No. No. I definitely agree. And I want to talk about now. To me, the new phenomenon is the prenuptial
Yeah.
agreement.
Yep.
And the reason why I wanted to talk about this, Una, because just recently, the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know if you heard that story. His name is
Hmm.
Dak Prescott, and
Hmm.
he said, according to what I heard,
Yep.
they got two kids together, and they were
Yep.
going to get married in April.
Yep.
Um, and he had asked her to sign a prenup, I think,
Mm.
prior to the wedding. She
Uh-huh.
kept on hesitating, and anyway, they called off the wedding.
Oh, wow.
Right, and if you, it's been all over the news. But I mean, I'm a big sports guy, so when I
Yep.
saw this and read this, I'm like, "Whoa,
Yeah.
wow, what happened?"
Whoa.
Then
Yeah.
previously, there was a former basketball player who
Hmm.
said he asked his fiance to sign a prenup 6 months
Hmm.
prior to the wedding, and she kept on pushing it
Mm.
off, pushing it off, and pushing it off. And the day of the wedding, he called it off because she hadn't signed it.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
and I just saw this one
Ooh. Uh-huh.
maybe a day or two ago. So this is like perfect
Wow.
because I want to get your opinion on it. So
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
said that he had asked her. and he kept on and kept on. He
Hmm.
said that they also
Hmm.
had agreement where she was going to get taken care of. I don't know the
Hmm.
financial detail because it wasn't
Right.
spoken. Anyway,
Yeah.
long story short, um, she said that she was going to sign it, but she was crying and all that. So he said
Mm.
no because he said that he didn't want to go to court and say that she signed it under duress.
Oh, yeah.
So this is
Wow.
what he was saying. Obviously,
Trauma. Yeah.
we haven't heard that the women's side of the
Right.
story.
Right.
But anyway, I
Right.
just wanted to get your opinion on that. This new,
Yeah.
because now I see podcasts where a sponsor is, fathers have rights now. So I'm seeing all this
Hmm.
now, like trying to fight the court
Yeah.
system, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Hmm.
So what's,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I don't know about those two cases. I don't follow sports that closely, but
yeah,
I don't know about those cases. And I would wonder, my questions would be what was in that prenup and was it fair? Was it, because frankly, whether you're a man or a woman, if you're a celebrity or a big sports person, you're going to need a lot of support at home, right? You're going to need it's very hard. I mean, I know like Taylor Swift is doing it, but it's very hard to have, two people who are having these huge careers, right?
mm,
Usually one person has a huge if one person has a huge career, the other person really needs to support that career, right? They might need to move or go wherever, they whatever they get. What happens in sports? They get bought by a different team.
yeah.
They what's the
Good
term?
analogy. No, I think I like that. Yeah, that's a
You
great
know,
analogy of when it comes to couples. No, that's perfect. But I know what you're
so
saying. Yeah,
so I think, sometimes there'll be a prenup. Sometimes a big celebrity will say, "Well, I don't want you to take all my money,
sure.
right? Like I'm going to make a ton of money, and if you leave me, I don't want you to get half my money."
Mm,
On the other hand, I think the person who's not the celebrity, if they're going to kind of give up their career or, be the kind of second fiddle to the big celebrity, then they need to be compensated for that, right? It's not
right,
really fair for them if the celebrity makes all this money and then the prenup says, if we end, you get nothing, or
right.
I'll give you a little tiny bit,
Mm,
so I don't know the details of those particular cases. I would be
right.
interested to find out what those prenups said.
Yeah, no, perfect. Exactly. So, talking about celebs, right? Like you were talking about Taylor Swift. Now,
Yeah.
supposedly she's a billionaire, and her future husband,
Yep.
maybe he might have 50 to 100 million. So that's a
Yep.
huge gap. So
Right.
I wonder if that's going to be some type of prenup there, right, to
Yeah.
protect
Yeah.
Taylor's
Right.
assets. So
Yep.
that would be interesting. First of all,
It will be. And what's going to happen if those two have kids, right? Who's going to
mm,
stay home with the kids?
well, his career is almost done.
Uh-huh.
Usually, a football player's career, if he's a good player, they might last anywhere
Hmm.
from 10 to 15 years. He's on his
Hmm.
14th year.
Oh,
And as a
wow.
sports guy that I am, he's pretty much on his
Hmm.
last legs, so to speak,
Yep.
in sports.
Yep.
So that's a great
Yep.
question. First of
So
all,
do you
yeah, go ahead.
imagine him staying home while she's out touring? Do you think he'll stay home and take care of the kids? It's an
Boy,
interesting question, isn't it?
it is an interesting question because as what I've seen over, from him over the last few years, he has his own podcast with his brother, and it's a sports
Hmm.
podcast. So I don't know how if it's doing well. I don't know, but that's a good
Hmm.
question. If they're going to hire nannies,
Right?
while she's
Right?
touring. So yeah,
Yep.
that's an interesting question. Um,
Yeah.
First of all, Una, I want to thank you so much for being on People on Dating. Man, I could talk to you about another hour because this is to
Uh-huh.
me very fascinating. Before I let you go, anything else you want to promote? Let's talk more about your book. Any Oprah
Yeah.
Winfrey appearances, TEDx talks that you got coming up?
I don't have any Oprah appearances coming up. I was on the CBS Morning Show with Gail King, so
Oh,
you can find that on YouTube. And I was in Time Magazine, and my book is doing great. Again, it's called Unhitched: The Essential Divorce Guide for Women,
mm-hmm.
and it's a wonderful book. It comes in audiobook and ebook and paperback, and people can buy it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. And it's really just a guide to help you with the emotional aspects of divorce. And, frankly, a lot of men have read it and said it's really helpful for them too. I wrote it
Mm,
for women because that's my expertise and that's who I've
sure.
been working with for the past 15 years. But a lot of men have found it to be helpful too. So I encourage people to check it out and check out my website, which is unametz.com. It's got a lot of free resources on it.
Yeah, I'll definitely put that on the show notes. And
Great.
before I let you go, one last word about dating after divorce. What would be maybe what's the word I'm looking for? A helpful tip.
Uh-huh. A helpful tip would be, I think it's important to date yourself before you date other people and really figure out, after getting out of a relationship or a marriage, really figure out who you are, what you want, what you like, and what you want in a relationship before you go out. So don't rush it. We've got plenty of time. Don't be in a rush.
I like that. Don't be in a rush. Take your time, date
Mhm.
yourself, get your know. Yeah, I love that. Well, Una, thank you again so much for being on People on Dating and taking time out of your busy schedule. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, I so appreciate it. It was great having this conversation tonight.
No, definitely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
All right.